think all of the lessons are about how faith is often a journey that we are called to follow, and very often God is leading by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar by fire at night, and we're not always sure where we're going, but we are sure that it's God who is leading us. And that really ties into one of the questions that someone submitted this summer, and they simply asked if Marissa and I would at some point share our faith journey. And I'll leave you, Marissa, to do that sometime yourself, but it certainly seems fitting now that my journey is coming to an end here to share a little about my journey and to just share with you a little bit about my walk with Christ, which has really been all of my life. In fact, it seems like I have always had faith. I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, same as Lisa Sassaman. She was born not that far away from me. And I was born at the St. Vincent Hospital in Worcester, and the very first person to pick me up and hold me and wash me and pray for me when I was born was a Catholic nun. And I have always thought that has something to do with my being here. And from as early as I can remember, I think 4 years old, I cannot explain it. I don't know why. I didn't do anything to earn it or deserve it, but I simply had a deep love for Jesus. And it was personal. And Jesus was my friend, and I talked to him like a friend every day, and we walked together. And by the time I was 5, when we moved to Manchester, Connecticut, I had already told my mother that I wanted to be a minister when I grew up. And because of my love for Jesus, I have always felt a special connection with people who love Jesus too and would give their life for him. Well, we moved to Connecticut when I was 5, and we lived in a nice suburban neighborhood where all the neighbors knew one another, and where we celebrated the holidays in one of the neighbors' houses, and all the kids played together after school, and it was a quieter life back then. And sometimes I wish that kids could still have that today. And the church was important in everyone's life back then. I went to church every week. I went to Emmanuel Lutheran Church, which was a huge Swedish Lutheran church. In fact, the town was a Swedish town. There were 2 pages of Johnsons and 2 pages of Andersons in the phone book. And there were 42 kids in my confirmation class. And we had a wonderful youth group with a great youth pastor, Eric, who at the time had long hair, which drove the adults nuts, and who used to park his motorcycle at the front door of the church, which really drove people nuts, but we loved him. And he always felt that the church's task for kids, the one thing the church should do then was to open our eyes to a bigger world, and to be able to get out of our small town and our small homes and experience new things and new bigger things and new people. And we did lots of life-changing things and had life-changing experiences together. We cleaned up the neighborhoods after the civil rights riots in Hartford. On Fridays, which was one of the most difficult things for me, we went to a stake. At that time it was called a home for the retarded, but anyway, it was a home for children who lived in the institution, and each of us adopted a mentally ill child for the afternoon. Mine was autistic, and we played big brother, big sister to that child, and left a deep impression upon me. We went to the Cape and New York City and the Virgin Islands, and all of it was meant to open up my eyes. So all through high school, with the support of the church, my faith was very strong, and I continued to plan and want and imagine myself as a minister. But during those years, my home life was difficult, and that was the paradox of how difficult my home life was, and yet how well things seemed to be outside of my home. I mean, outside of the home, God seemed to bless me in all that I did. Sometimes it just surprised me. I learned to work. I learned to work very hard, And I learned that if you had a job, you showed up on time and you stayed all day and you spent the duration and you were there every day unless you were very, very sick. And by the age 10, Jesus and I had a paper route every afternoon. And at age 13, I was chosen Newsboy of the Year, which was this. I had a full-page picture of myself at 13 years old in the newspaper, and they took me to Yale University and had a dinner in my honor and gave me a $25 savings bond. It was just like, for a kid of 13, it was amazing, but it was like, this was a surprise to me. And by 13, I was working summers in Connecticut tobacco fields, and by 14 was a straw boss. At 16, I was head of the garden shop at Caldor's department store in Connecticut. And then at school, I did very well, and eventually I was elected captain of my cross-country team and president of the student council, and I graduated 12th in a class of 742. God just blessed me. I'm not bragging. These things just seem to happen to me, and I've always been blessed with being academic, and I've always graduated with honors in college and seminary and my doctorate. But there was something about going to college, though, that we know then and now often tests your faith. And at Tufts, I stopped going to church, and I heard professors who were critical of organized religion. And it was the early 70s, and everyone was questioning every institution and authority, and I remember writing to my advisor that I just wanted nothing more to do with the organized church, and that I wanted to simply love Jesus and live my life without all of those trappings. But somehow, though, Jesus kept an eye on me, and sometimes God does things in your life you don't even realize. And my sophomore year in college, I had to do a January study project, and so I thought it would be cool. I went to a St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, a Trappist monastery, and I spent there a month in silence, no talking for a whole month, which was really amazing and different, and it's where I learned to appreciate solitude. And I learned to practice the discipline of continuous prayer. And the only time I did talk was with the dear Abbot Thomas, who, like my youth pastor before me, took me under his wing and spent a lot of time talking with me, and it was really a great gift. And that's one thing that I've often experienced in my journey with God, is that God, for whatever reason, always seems to send to me just the right person at just the right time. Well, my faith in the church and college was still being challenged, and I spent my junior year in London studying theater and religious drama. William Hurt, the actor, was a member of our class. It was really awesome. We used to do these religious cycle plays, and William Hurt played God, and we always thought that he did a much better job of playing God than even God could have done. But being in Europe changed me, and when I finished college, I left the church altogether, and I left the idea of being a minister behind, and instead I joined a bank management training program, and for the next 3 years I learned all of the departments in banking, which was a good thing, and I'm glad I had it. But my motive was at that point is I just wanted to make a whole lot of money and to travel, and that was fine with my life. But of course, when God has his hand on you, he doesn't let you go. And after a couple of years of banking, the thought of being a minister just kept coming back. And I came to know that if I didn't at least try it, I would regret it the rest of my life. And so I enrolled at the Lutheran Seminary in Gettysburg, which the locals call the Angel Factory. And it was wonderful, and I got close to several of my professors, and I did very well, and God restored and deepened my faith. Well, when I graduated, I planned to go back to a church in New England, but there was nothing available. So my first parish was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And those were the Carter years. Those were tough. economic times. Mortgage rates, our first mortgage, I think, and this was from a banker, member of the church, our first mortgage, I think, was 14.8% mortgage, right? The steel mills had all shut down. People were leaving the town to find work, and everything was closing up. And the biggest industries that were left were the hospitals. But it was a good place to begin, and God helped me learn so many things there. I actually went door to door canvassing and canvassed the whole neighborhood, which was an amazing experience. And we started a nursery school and an afternoon latchkey program, and did musical concerts and community barbecues, and the kids did mission trips to Reynosa, Mexico, and anything we could think of. But those were tough times. And during that time, God also led me to take care of myself. I was not healthy. I did 7 or 8 years of very, very intensive therapy with a wonderful dear man. It was very, very painful. It was very difficult, but it was also very spiritual. You could say I learned to bear a cross. And much of that became my treasure. I believe that God spins manure into gold. I was in Johnstown 14 years, and my next parish was in Huntington, Pennsylvania, which is near State College. And Huntington, this last year, was voted the second best place to live in the whole state of Pennsylvania because of the quality of the town and country place. It's a village, multi-generational. When a child plays t-ball at age 5, it's not unusual to have all his grandparents and aunts and uncles and parents all there for the t-ball game, cheering him or her on. The building, though, was over 100 years old, and it was really failing. Nothing was handicapped access. The stairs were narrow and dark. The fellowship hall was in the basement, so there was no way for people to get down there. The outer work was stonework, and it was all deteriorating and crumbling. When I arrived, they bought a bunch of properties around the church to do something, and they even bought this huge gym in order to have a youth ministry. But it all just sort of, there was nothing definite, and nothing was really happening. So we went through a process of congregational meetings, and we did a study. And then we hired an architect, and he determined it was not going to be a remodel, but it was going to have to be a whole tear down and a brand new building. And he created all the plans and models, and they were beautiful, and everyone was excited, and we thought this was really wonderful till the cost estimate came in at $2.8 million. And then everyone choked. And the project stalled. And for 3 years, nothing seemed to happen. And God and I had this ongoing prayer dispute about why, Jesus, why, and why isn't anything happening, and this is all stalled. And then the slate roof went bad, and we were facing a $200,000 cost on a roof that we planned to tear down when we built the new building, and we didn't know what to do. So all we did is patch it and hope it would stay, but it was bad because one day after rain I came in the sacristy and there was water pouring out of the ceiling lights. But I kept praying, saying, Lord, why isn't this working? I don't understand, and we got no answer. Well, I stayed 10 good years, and it was a wonderful time. We had a wonderful goodbye party at Juniata College, and all my clergy friends came, and it was just such fun, and I finished saying goodbye, and I was in the process of packing. And the following Monday, 5 o'clock in the morning, I get this call, 5 o'clock in the morning. Hello? And I said, what? And they said, please come to the church, we need your keys. I said, why do you need my keys? Because the church is on fire. Do you remember all that water coming through the roof and through the light sockets and the electrical? Well, there was an electrical fire, and the church had these huge, massive, 100-year-old dried-up old beams that were holding the whole building, and they caught fire. And the fire flames were like 40, 50 feet in the air, and then the whole thing just fell and then burned everything, all the way down to the bottom of the church. Well, it turned out to be a total loss. When we were doing the planning for this church, we expected to spend $300,000 to tear down the old building before we built the new one. Instead, can you believe they got $2.6 million in insurance? It affirms my faith. God works in mysterious ways, but only according to His time and His plan. And no, I did not set the fire. Well, my next church was in New Jersey, and that was difficult. The bishop called me there. It was a church nearby where Dodie was working. They called me to do interim ministry, and they sat down and they had a specific agenda that they felt the church needed. But the church didn't want it at all. And they really thought that after a beloved pastor of 25 years, that they really could just hire someone immediately and that person would walk on the door and everything would just go fine. But you see, after 25 years, they were so set in their ways that all I had to do was blink an eyebrow differently and it caused people to be upset by the change. They did need an interim. They were resistant for a long time. It was hard work. And a lot of times I felt like I was swimming upstream. But after 3 years, they called me as pastor, and I believe a lot of good progress got made. And I think there God taught me to be stronger and have the courage to say things that were necessary and not necessarily do everything to be liked. To give people what they needed and not necessarily what they wanted. And that's hard to do, but I stayed there 6 years. And then I came here in 2010, and it was kind of an amazing thing. Didn't know much about God's love. I loved the area and wanted to come here, but I had a whole list of churches that I wanted that were open and vacant and wanted to visit, and God's love was on the bottom of the list. I had 8 or 9 other churches that were much higher than that. And so I drove around and went to Sellersville and went over to Montgomery County and looked at each of the churches, and I'll never forget that I drove into the parking lot out there and I just heard this voice say, "This is it. This is where you will be." And so I called up the assistant to the bishop, Larry, at the time and said, "I want to go there." He said, "No, you're not going there." I said, "I really want to go there." "No, you're not going there. You're from outside of the city." "No, you're not going there." And several times in the next year, I would call up and say, "Gee, how's that going?" "Nope, you're not going there." But then after Easter, the bishop called me and asked me a whole bunch of questions and invited me to interview here. And I was just like, praise Jesus, I can't believe this. I never thought that this would happen. So, and certainly, I was glad to be here, and I really feel that the work we have done together has been good. It's had its time. It was a time of transition, but I think we have all loved this church, all of us, and we have all tried to be faithful to Jesus here and to His Word the best we know how. So I just want to say thank you for all of your love and your support. Thanks to the church council for all their hard work and dedication, for all of the church councils over the years, and to our staff, Kay and Ken, who quietly and faithfully keep the fort down and see that so many important things get done, and to Pastor Marissa, my dear colleague, with whom I felt it's been a privilege to share ministry with and feel I've learned as much from you as you have from me, and we have wrestled together with ministry in these changing times. So that's my journey of faith, and through it all there have been so many changes and so many different opportunities, but I think one thing has remained the same for me and always will, and that is that I know that Jesus loves me, and He has walked with me all of my days, and so many times He has blessed me beyond what I even could imagine. I love Him, And I know that he will always be with me forever, and I'm sure that he is with you, and he will be through all of the days ahead. So again, thank you for all of the love and the support you've shown me in this ministry, and for all of the love and care you have shown one another, and for all the good work that you have begun in Christ's name and will do in the future. I love you all. Amen.
Amen.